Hello there and welcome to Homo Politicos. You're watching Enterprise Television. Today, we turn attention to youth participation, particularly in politics and governance in Nigeria. In today's digital world, Nigerian youths are louder than ever before, from WhatsApp to other social media platforms, from viral hashtags to trending political conversations. Young Nigerians are actively demanding accountability, transparency, and good governance. But a new study titled Comparative Analysis, Online Advocacy for Good Governance and Political Involvement Among Nigerian Youths reveals a troubling contradiction. While more than half of Nigerian youths participate in political discussions digitally, that's across social media platforms on a daily basis, many cannot identify their ward representatives, their lawmakers, or the very political structures that shape their daily lives. Even more concerning, about 50% have never voted. According to the study, they've never attended a rally or participated in offline political processes, the very actions that determine leadership and national direction. This particular research identifies fear of violence, insecurity, lack of trust in the electoral system, and deep political disillusionment as major barriers. Yet, there's hope. An overwhelming majority of young Nigerians say, going by this research, that they're willing to participate if the system becomes safer, more transparency, if there's more transparency and if it's more transparent and it is more credible. Well, on Homo Politicos today, we're posing the critical questions. Are Nigerian youths truly politically disengaged, or has the system failed to earn their participation? Well, joining me, there's a researcher behind this revealing study you've mentioned. That's James Ujo, that they call it. He's a journalist and researcher. He joins me virtually for this conversation on Homo Politicos. Many thanks for joining me, James.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, appreciate you joining me on Homo Politicos today. This is a very vital conversation because, we're gradually approaching that very, critical stage where political parties will have to decide flag bearers for their political parties, come 2027. And there's been talk around the election timetable, and there's been so much talk via social media about what 2027 could be. But your research, shows something critical, that while there's so much participation across social media platforms, it looks like there's not so much participation, that the same measure is not given when you use social media to do the actual voting, the actual engagement and participation needed on the field. Well, let's get talking about this immediately, James. You want to very quickly, reveal what your study and research shows in this survey that you did. What did you find?
Okay. Thank you so much. This research was born out of curiosity. Of course, when you look at the context of Nigeria's political landscape, the youth have the larger influence. Because when you look at over 70% of our population, they are young people. And so it's out of curiosity, I decided to measure how the level of involvement of these young people offline, because we have seen so many engagements online. If you go online every day on Twitter, on Facebook, most time you see different hashtags, people advocating for good governance, which is not entirely bad, but so it's that sort of curiosity made me to comparatively measure to see if these people that are very engaged online, if they are also active offline. And so the research sampled 385 young people online using survey, the questionnaire as research instrument, and the research established findings from the research show that a lot of young people are digitally aware, when it comes to politics, when it comes to, politics generally, they are politically aware online, but offline, they have limited knowledge of their political leaders, as you mentioned, which is the cross, of politics. Because how do you tell me you are politically aware, you're politically engaged, but you can't identify basic as the name of your ward councillor or your local government chairman, who is representing the House of Assembly, House of Representative, and Senate. And so, beyond the lack of political knowledge, the study established that young people are mostly active online. They are not really active offline, as the studies show that majority of them, they don't belong to a political party. They've never voted before. They don't engage in political rallies and all of that. So, but the study went further because we want to treat issue holistically. So we identify what are the factors, limiting young people from participating in offline political activities despite their loud presence online. And the study showed that majority of these young people, they are afraid. They identify fear of violence as the major barrier why they don't participate. Many indicated that the fear of uncertainty, possible outbreak of violence, discourage them from going offline, to participate. Then another factor was lack of interest. And this is very concerning because as a journalist myself, a couple of times we've gone out to on election day to interview people, young people playing football on the streets, and when you ask them why are they not voting, why are they not at the polling unit, they tell you why should they go there. So lack of interest was another major factor, and the third factor was lack of distrust. There's a distrust in the electoral system. A lot of young people indicated that they feel their votes, their presence, their participation will not change anything. And so this kind of distrust and fear of safety and the lack of interest, there are major barriers fueling, the apathy we are seeing offline.
All right.
Yeah, so these are just the summary of the research.
Yeah. You know, you just mentioned one of the most alarming findings, in your survey, which is that many youths cannot identify their ward representatives, even lawmakers. What does this say from your point of view? Because you say you did this out of curiosity, yeah? You went to the survey out of curiosity. But what does this say from your standpoint about civic education and political awareness in Nigeria today? Because you say that, yes, they are digitally aware. They know things on social media. But what does this say about the civic space?
Yeah, it shows that a lot needs to be done in the civic space, particularly, when you look at our system in Nigeria, we are not intentional about educating people, to know their civic rights. How many, if you go to the market, visit the market today, visit how many young people today, and you see you see from their conversation that they don't feel the power they have as citizens. They don't understand the level of influence they have, when it comes to participating in governance, participating in elections, participating in issues or affairs of. So it shows the limited sort of limited knowledge of civic rights among young people. And this is a democratic system, and people need to understand that the power in the people, is greater than the people in power. So, but we need to make them come to that understanding. So that's civic rights. We are in a system where a lot of people will tell you, we leave everything to God. You see, so it does that limited knowledge of civic rights among people.
You mentioned fear of violence, distrust as well in the electoral body, that those were factors that pose major barriers for this youth going by the responses you got. By your assessment, how much of youth political disengagement do you think is driven by fear versus frustration with the system itself? Because this is a very critical one. This particular, factors, or these factors you've mentioned, they are very critical because we're approaching 2027 again. If you look at the numbers from 2023, the number of registered voters compared with those who went to vote, eventually it feels like, wait, what's happening? You mentioned yourself that when it is election day, it is D-Day, you expect that people will step out, try to go cast their ballots for their favorite candidates, but you find several Nigerian youths, particularly, playing football, lounging around, and the rest. Some say, well, fear. Some say frustration. They don't trust that, the system, their votes will count. Yet things like that. So, from your standpoint, how much of youth political disengagement do you think is driven by fear versus, frustration against the electoral system and the political system at large?
Okay, yeah. So from the study, I'll go by the study exclusively. So, like, study showed that the fear of safety, fear of violence, accounted for majority. In terms of this distrust, this disengagement, political disengagement among young people. So when you look at the breakdown of these, we saw that 34.3% identified fear of violence as the major reason why they don't participate in offline political activities. Then we have 11.8 that said distrust in politicians. We also have 17.4% that said the lack of trust in the electoral system. So 18.2 said lack of interest. So when you look at a breakdown of this, you see that fear of violence accounts for major reasons from this finding of the research why young people are not engaged politically offline. And it's raised a question, like you also mentioned earlier, because now we are going to 2027, and before now we've not even had a situation maybe as bad as this, where kidnapping, all of that are now like the order of the day. So it will take a lot of work by the INEC, by the security agencies, by every relevant stakeholders to convince young people to actually go out there to vote in 2027. Because look, people are also prioritizing their safety. As long as they want the best person to win, they want the right candidate, their own candidate to win the election. They also have to prioritize their safety, and that is why we have to be intentional about our security architecture during, even before, during, and after elections.
What do you think is fueling this fear, though? I mean, you've just mentioned insecurity, we're seeing kidnappings and the rest, but we do know that somehow, magically, if you look at the trend in previous elections, magically, somehow, when it is time for the elections, this kidnapping stop, banditry stops, things like that, terrorism stops in Nigeria. It just takes some pause, somehow, and resumes weeks later when the candidate has emerged winner of the elections. So what do you think really is fueling this fear? Is it the use of thugs by politicians and political parties? Is it, ballot box snatching that we don't see so much these days? Is it intimidation? What do you think?
Yes, so I think it's an inherent something we have. It's inherent in the system. Let me put it that way. Because I've been an ad hoc staff, ANEC ad hoc staff, when I was doing my NYC days, and you see election day. For instance, during the Otoge election in Kwara State, I was ad hoc staff then, and you witness low turnout of people coming out because of yeah. You mentioned thuggery. It's a major factor because people, let's say before now, people are not really scared of kidnapping or bandits or whatever. It's the fear of thuggery, it's the fear of violence, maybe between political party agents and all of that. And then he also talked about we saw what happened during the 2020 election, for instance, when in Lagos State some set of people were threatened that, look, if you come outside. So there's this general fear that encapsulates every electoral circle in Nigeria. And so these are, become part and parcel of people. It has eaten deep into the consciousness of Nigerians. And so when it comes to a time to vote, people feel that it's just safer for them to stay indoors than going out because they are just not sure of what's going to happen. And that's why I mentioned earlier that, look, it's going to take a lot of reorientation, not just in words, but in action, to show that people, you are safe, that you can really come out and move, because this is endemic, it's inherent in the system, and you can't erase this in just a single day. You have to show reaction to convince the voters to come out.
Well, your research suggests that what more than 80% of youths would participate more actively if elections were safer and more credible. So what specific reforms, going by what you've discovered in this survey, what specific reforms do you believe are necessary now as we continue to count down to 2027 so that we can restore the confidence of Nigerian youths before 2027?
Thank you. So in terms of reforms, we have to start with the security. One, We have to invest. I don't know. The government has to do a lot of work. Other stakeholders at the grassroots level, from local government level to the national level, we have to show Nigerians, the government, you have to show Nigeria that really they are concerned about security and they want to create a safe atmosphere for people to go out there to vote on election day. The second one, it has to be INEC. Uh, Distrust in the system is a big concern. We saw the aftermath of 2023 election. A lot of people, young people, were not happy. A lot of voters were not happy because they feel their votes did not count or they feel their preferred candidate did not win. So we have to be intentional now, and it's really a concern because now we saw the issue that pan out or that trade the recent electoral act that was passed, that was assented by the president. When we young people, many people are demanding for real-time transmission of results, and this was not eventually implemented. So that for me alone now, it's a big discouragement to many people that really want to participate in 2027. So perhaps we need INEC to come out, full force, national orientation agencies, and other relevant bodies to come out to also and maybe educate Nigerians on the fact that look, yeah, with this system in place, that we might not have real-time transmission as demanded, but even with this arrangement in place, these are where you can also ensure transparency. So with this form of enlightenment and security architecture in place, I think we can raise hope, we can elevate the hope of many young people to come out.
Hopefully, hopefully we can do that. Just before, as we begin to wrap the conversation and wind down, let's talk very quickly about this knowledge gap that does exist when it comes to identification of political office holders in the country. It just brings to mind one more time, if you remember I think it was the last set of, okay, yes, it wasn't the ministerial position. It was the ambassadorial nominees of President Ballot who had, who were present at the Senate for their screening. I recall one particular one, I think the one from Ekiti State who was questioned. He had mentioned the name, I think, of one of the representative, one of the senators, and then he was told to mention other representatives from his state, and he couldn't mention that. That's someone who's, who has now been appointed by the president as ambassadors. Why do you think this is the case? Because I think this is beyond Nigerian youths. I think this is a system cultural problem. Feel free to disagree with me, all right? So many persons. And let's think about this even deeper. If I said to you, for example, who is your ward representative, who is your councillor? Maybe you know right now, but several persons do not know. They probably don't even care. Why do you think this is the problem? Or rather, not why you think this is the problem. I think that's the wrong way to put it. My question would be, why does this problem exist? How did we get here? What can we do to change the problem?
Okay, thank you so much. That's a good question. I think that's one of the areas I'm also looking into currently. So, like you said, I agree with your line of thoughts. To me, it's a systemic issue, right? Our system is not intentional enough in inculcating the political culture, inculcating political consciousness into people. If I ask you to go to any primary school, you ask me myself now. My might not even correctly mentioned, my local ward councillor. This is the reality. And if we go out there, sample a lot of young Nigerians, they don't probably don't know. So if you go to most of our secondary schools, primary schools, what are we teaching them? If you go to our universities, what are we teaching them? How intentional is our school curriculum to ensure that from that young age, we have people, coming to terms with their political leaders, understanding their political leaders from their names to their roles to all of this. So we have to be intentional about this. And another major factor why I think we're not having that is because there's a disconnect. People feel that governance, it's for a particular set of people. You see, and so when you talk to average Nigerians, you see their response that they feel they don't even belong, like they are not part of government, and that's why they, when there are issues of critical issue that we want people to come out and hear their voice, they don't believe they matter. You see, is a systemic issue, and that is why I talk about reorientation. There's no meaningful change that can happen in Nigeria where we need to undo so many things. We need to undo so many mindsets in Nigeria, and that is why this conversation, for instance, is taking place, so that young people, not even young people now, Nigerians as a whole, can come together and understand the power they carry, can understand that they are critical stakeholders, when it comes to governance. And so it's you can you ask, look around and see when we have a governor, for instance, commissioning maybe borehole, and you see people dancing, you people rolling out drums, and you be wondering why are they dancing? That's the governor constructed a borehole. This is your basic right. This is something that's this is something that they should do. So that civic, we need to educate them more on their civic rights. On when we get to this level, then it becomes so natural that just part of the system. But as it stands now, they are really they are not Nigerians. They don't feel part of the system enough, and that's really the major problem we're having.
Well, finally, based on your findings, you believe Nigerian youths, do you believe more like that Nigerian youths are pathetic, or they're politically conscious, but simply disconnected from, formal political structures? Which do you think, from your findings, is the case, and from your general knowledge? I mean, of course, of covering and writing the, journalistic features, pieces. What do you think is really the case? The Nigerian youths, just the ones that, they know, consign them, or do you think they are politically conscious, but they are disconnected from formal political structures?
Okay, let's just look at it holistically. A lot of people, I would say for now, a lot of people, the larger percentage will say, consign them. They feel like it's not their thing. Honestly, this is the reality. If you maybe do some social experiments, survey and all of that, you see that a lot of young people don't feel it's their thing. They just feel government, it's for another set of people. And yeah, we have a percentage of people that are politically conscious. But you see, they are also not, the system has not provided enough structure or enough access for them to exercise their civic rights.
What would the
For instance, you
system
look
do,
at
though, James? Okay, yeah, you were going to say, for example,
yeah, so
yes.
yeah, I was looking at the example, for instance, when you look at the nomination fee, the amount you need to pay. Let's look at PDP, the APC, the nomination form. How many Nigerian youth can afford 100 million naira, contest for president? When you look
James,
at PDP, how many?
I was going to say, pardon me, yeah, I was going to say that, okay, that's with contesting, actually going, throwing your heart in the ring to contest. But beyond that, even when it comes to attending ward party meetings, those ward congresses, those, meetings, those, I was traveling recently and I got to a particular town and I found that they were meeting, it was just by the roadside. A political party, they put their banner there, people were meeting, people were crossing over to the road, they sat there, no canopies, nothing, just chairs, and they were meeting. And I could barely find, at least in that moment that I passed through that particular road, not one single youth, or, when I say youth, a young person you'd expect to be part of that, was more of those who, have crossed maybe 45, 50. But so I'm saying that what more would the system do from your standpoint? Very quickly.
Yeah, beyond the education, the system can only do more, do a little by man educating them on their civic rights, and they're creating structures in place to encourage them to participate. But beyond that, if you look at the research, one of the key recommendations that the young people have to go beyond online advocacy. And this is the stage, this is the real conversation we need to have. We know we keep shouting good governance online, but when we come to reality, the old people will still go to those meetings like you talk about. Those political rallies are still dominated by old people and all of that. So we need to see young people. Now, I always tell people that look, we have come to an era where we can't really give excuses again. That this is the reason. Maybe like money, all these things are not reasons why young people should not be engaged again. Because now we are even an area where we can crowdfund for people. We are seeing many movements, for instance, today, like very dark movement and all of that, thriving largely on people's money and all of that, and contributing to a cause they believe is going to help. So we just need people that are more intentional. We need young people that are more intentional now to come out and say, look beyond our online advocacy. We really want to participate. It's not just to contest, like you say, in those world meetings, in those rallies, in those manifestos. How many young people are there to ask their leaders questions that, look, how are you going to achieve this? How are you going to implement this? These are the issues we need to address before 2027.
There you go. There you go. Well, James, I'd like to thank you so much for being part of the conversation. I know that you made several recommendations in your research. You made several recommendations, and these recommendations we cannot. You have mentioned many of such recommendations, but if there's one, two, maybe three that you've not mentioned, you want to very quickly talk about that before we go. Recommendations. Yeah.
I think basically we have addressed them, but I think the last one, maybe the last one I've not mentioned, but I talk about there should be effort should be intensified by the government, and other stakeholders to ensure increased transparency. See, we can't have an electoral system that the youth that really trust. They can be participating when transparency is an issue. So there has to be that openness. There has to be that deliberate intention by government and INEC and other stakeholders to create a system that's transparent enough that people can be proud of and they want to participate, they want to associate with. I think that was like one of the major recommendations I would say.
Alrighty then, there you go. Well, it's been one conversation that we needed to have. Such a conversation that definitely should support you, particularly if you're one that does not have not been participating, does not, and is still not looking to participate. I've been speaking with journalist and researcher James Ujo Adekole. Is again a journalist and researcher who's been talking to me about his research and what he's recently found regarding the study when it comes to the participation of Nigerian youth in elections and politics generally. James, I'd like to thank you so much for being a part of the conversation.
Yeah, thank you for having me and for a platform like this to talk about a critical issue like this. Thank you so much.
Well done with the job you do, and well done with what you've done. For that spotlighting the need for Nigerian youth to participate as we continue to count down to 2027. It's not enough to just stay on social media and complain and participate there with hashtags and viral posts. Beyond the trends, you've got to be part of the conversation. Begin with first identifying those who represent you at the ward level from, even your street. There are people who have formed, there's an association right there. You probably don't know. You should know, right? There's the chairman who works with the vice chairman, secretary, and the rest on your street. And if you see new things happening, like the fixing of drainages and the rest, poles and the rest, there are people who collaborate, especially landlords who collaborate with other government officials, maybe other private ventures like the discourse to get some things done in your community. You don't even know, right? But you want things to work well. And that's how to begin, really. You don't, just maybe you don't need to join a political party, but you can do a lot more. And this study by James presents both a warning and an opportunity for Nigeria. A warning that Nigeria risks raising a generation that speaks passionately about change, but remains absent from the very processes that creates that change. And yes, an opportunity because the willingness of